Control, this is Wraith. Green light. Green light.
Negative. Control.
Execute immediately. I hear you, but I can't take this shot.
Do you copy? Abort mission now.
I'm sorry.
Control, this is Wraith. Wind is holding steady. 4 miles per hour, full value left to right. Elevation dialed. I have positive ID on the primary. Copy, Wraith. You have green light. Send it. Maya didn't move. Her finger rested on the curve of the trigger, feeling the cold metal bite into her glove. Through the Schmidt and Bender scope, the world was magnified 25 times. The target was breathing, exhaling a plume of white vapor into the freezing mountain air. But something was wrong. The rhythm was off. Wraith, command. Status, we are on a tight window. Take the shot. Negative, Control. There's interference. The target isn't alone. I'm seeing a secondary heat signature. Small, child-sized. Intel confirms target is alone, Wraith. That's a negative on the secondary. It's likely a sensor ghost. You are cleared hot. Execute immediately. Maya's eye twitched. The thermal image wasn't ghosting. The heat signature was clinging to the target's leg. If she took the shot now, the hydrostatic shock alone would kill the child. But the order was absolute. Control, I am staring at a non-combatant. I cannot. Lieutenant Commander Vance, this comes from the top. Neutralize the asset now, or we abort and the threat moves. Do you want the blood of thousands on your hands or just one? Send. It. The radio hissed with static. Maya closed her eyes for a microsecond, the memory of salt water and tears burning in her throat. I'm sorry, she whispered, not to the radio. Click Harry. 72 hours earlier. As the heat off the tarmac at the Dam Neck Annex distorted the air, turning the distant targets into wavering ghosts. It was 90 degrees with 90% humidity, the kind of Virginian summer day that made the air feel like a wet wool blanket. Lieutenant Commander Maya Wraith Vance didn't sweat, or rather, she didn't let it show. She lay prone on the shooting mat, her body a rigid line of potential energy. The stock of the Chaytak M200 intervention pressed against her shoulder, a heavy, devastating piece of machinery chambered in 408. It was a weapon designed to kill engines, not just men, at distances that defied the curvature of the earth. Wind call? She murmured. Her voice was flat, devoid of the exhaustion that plagued the rest of the platoon. Variable, gusting 5 to 7, full value left, Master Chief Grave Miller replied from behind the spotting scope. Miller was a mountain of a man, his face a roadmap of scars and sun damage from 20 years in the teams. He was the only one who didn't look at Maya like she was a science experiment. Dialing, Maya said. Her fingers adjusted the turret. Click, click. Hey, isn't that her? A whisper drifted from the waiting bench behind them. It was the new guy, a transfer from Team 4. The mermaid? Maya's eye didn't leave the scope, but her jaw tightened. The mermaid. The nickname wasn't a compliment. Yeah, another voice, muttered lower, nervous. Hell Week, Class 302. Caught a wave to the face and started bawling. Commander panicked, almost rang the bell. They say she cried for 10 minutes straight. How the hell did she get through screening for DevGru then? Diversity hire? Stow it, Miller growled, not looking up from his scope. But the damage was done. The air around the shooting mat grew heavier than the humidity. Maya closed her eyes for a heartbeat. The memory was always there, lurking in the dark corners of her mind. The freezing cold of the Pacific, the sand grinding into her raw skin, the absolute crushing weight of failure pressing down on her chest. She had cried. It wasn't fear, it was frustration. It was the realization that her body was failing her will. But the camera that captured it didn't capture the internal war. It just saw a girl breaking. She opened her eyes. The target was 2,200 yards downrange, a steel plate the size of a dinner plate. At this distance, a heartbeat could throw the shot 3 feet off. Ignore the noise, Wraith, Miller said softly. Send it when you're ready. Maya exhaled. She slowed her heart rate, a biofeedback trick that took years to master. I am not the girl in the surf. I am the rifle. She focused on the reticle. She didn't just see the target. She felt the spin of the earth, the density of the humid air, the erratic dance of the wind. The whispers behind her faded into white noise. She squeezed the trigger between heartbeats. Boom! The recoil slammed into her, a controlled violence that she rode like a wave. Time of flight, 3 seconds, Miller counted. Ping. A faint metallic ring echoed back, barely audible over the cicadas. Impact. Dead center, Miller announced, his voice raising just enough for the cheap seats to hear. Adjust for follow-up. Target is moving. Moving? The new guy scoffed. It's a steel plate. In her head, it's moving, Miller snapped. Maya cycled the bolt. The brass casing ejected with a metallic clatter, smoking on the mat. She didn't look back at the hecklers. She didn't need to. In the community of special warfare, respect wasn't given. It was taken, round by round. Clean hit, Miller said, lowering his optics. Pack it up, Lieutenant. The XO wants a brief. We have a green light. Maya stood up, brushing the dust from her camis. She turned to the new guy, who was now studiously avoiding eye contact. She didn't say a word. She just held his gaze until he looked down, shifting uncomfortably. Where are we going? Miller asked as they walked toward the armory. Hindu Kush, Maya replied, her voice cooling the air around them. Operation Silent Glass. High altitude, extreme cold. Good, Miller grunted. You like the cold. I don't like it, Master Chief, Maya said, slinging the 40-pound rifle over her shoulder as if it were a purse. I just understand it. It preserves things, or it kills them. And us? We're the ice, Miller. We don't get cold. As they entered the dim light of the briefing room, Maya felt the shift. The training ground was over. The whispers didn't matter anymore. Out there in the silence of the mountains, no one cared if you cried. They only cared if you missed. And Maya Vance never missed. The interior of the C-130 Hercules was a cavern of vibrating darkness, smelling of hydraulic fluid and recycled anxiety. The ramp began to lower, revealing a rectangular maw of swirling black sky. The rush of air was instantaneous, a physical blow that dropped the cabin temperature by 30 degrees in seconds. Lieutenant Commander Maya Vance checked her wrist altimeter. 25,000 feet. The air outside was thin, lethal, and colder than deep space. She adjusted the seal of her oxygen mask, listening to the rhythmic hiss-click of her own breathing. It was the only sound she allowed herself to focus on. 2 minutes, the jumpmaster signaled, his fingers flashing the count. Maya stood up, the weight of her ruck and the weapon case strapped to her side, pressing her boots firmly into the metal deck. Around her, the silhouettes of her team, Alpha Element, were hulking shapes under the red combat lighting. They were ghosts in the making. Master Chief Miller gave her a thumbs up. It was a perfunctory gesture, professional but distant. Maya nodded back. She didn't need his reassurance. She needed the jump. Green light! Go! 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 The line surged forward. Maya stepped off the ramp and plunged into the abyss. The transition was violent. 1 second she was a passenger. The next she was a projectile falling at terminal velocity. The wind roared like a jet engine in her ears, tearing at her jumpsuit. She arched her back, stabilizing her fall, turning her body into a wing. Through her panoramic night vision goggles, NVGs, the world below was a grainy landscape of white phosphor, jagged peaks of the Hindu Kush rising like teeth to meet her. This was the dead zone, the altitude where the air was too thin to breathe without support. For Maya, this was peace. In the chaotic silence of the freefall, there were no whispers about her past. There was no video of a crying girl. There was only physics, drag, gravity, velocity. She checked her altimeter, 18,000 feet. The team was a tight cluster of green diamonds on her HUD, heads-up display, falling in formation. Then the wind shear hit. It wasn't a gust, it was a wall. A sudden, violent updraft from the mountain pass slammed into the formation. Maya was tossed sideways, spinning like a rag doll. Her inner ear screamed in protest. Break off! Stabilize! Miller's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by static. Maya fought the spin. She flared her arms, catching the air, forcing her body back into a stable arch. Her heart rate spiked, not from fear, but from the sudden deviation in the math. She checked the HUD. The diamonds were scattering. The wind had blown the stack apart. Altimeter check. 4,000. Pull! 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 Maya ripped the ripcord. The pilot's chute caught the air, dragging the main canopy out of the pack. The opening shock jerked her upward, snapping her harness tight against her thighs and chest. The roar of the wind vanished, replaced by the eerie whistle of the glide. She looked up. The canopy was fully inflated, a dark gray rectangle against the stars. But when she looked down, her stomach dropped. She wasn't over the primary drop zone. The wind had pushed her nearly 2 miles west, over a ridge of razor-sharp shale and ice. Wraith to element, I am off course, drifting west. Correcting, she transmitted. Negative, Wraith, Miller's voice came back, tight. We are all drifting. The winds are double the forecast. Prepare for a hard landing. The ground rushed up fast, too fast. The terrain was a nightmare of scree and ice patches. Maya flared the canopy at 50 feet, bleeding off speed, but the crosswind caught her again. She hit the ground hard. She rolled, the instinct of 1,000 jumps taking over, but the slope was steep. She slid 10 yards, her boots scraping for purchase on the frozen gravel, before coming to a stop against a boulder. She punched the release on her harness, freeing herself from the chute before the wind could drag her over the edge. She was alive. Sound off, Miller commanded. Wraith, up, green, she whispered into the mic. Viper, up. Doc, up. Maya scanned her immediate area with her thermal imager. The cold was biting now, seeping through her layers. About 50 meters up the slope, she saw a heat signature struggling. It was Viper, the comm specialist. He had landed near a fissure, and something was wrong. Maya moved. She didn't run. She flowed up the slope, her movements economical and silent despite the loose rock. As she got closer, she saw the problem. Viper was untangling himself from his chute, but his ruck, containing the primary SATCOM radio, had detached and was sliding slowly toward a dark crevasse. Viper lunged for it, slipping on the ice. Leave it, Maya hissed, not over the radio but through the air. Viper didn't listen. He scrambled, boots flailing. He was going to follow the gear into the hole. Maya dropped her weapon case and launched herself forward. She didn't grab Viper. She grabbed the strap of the sliding ruck just as it tipped over the lip of the crevasse. The weight jerked her shoulder socket, threatening to dislocate it. She slammed her crampons into the ice, anchoring herself. For a second, she held the 100-pound pack suspended over the black void, her breath pluming in the green glow of the night vision. Viper froze, staring at her, his eyes wide behind his goggles. With a grunt of exertion that she kept entirely internal, Maya hauled the pack back onto solid ice. She shoved it toward Viper. Secure your gear, she said, her voice devoid of adrenaline. Then secure yourself. Viper nodded, breathless. Thanks, Wraith. I thought, don't think. Move. We have to rally on Miller. They moved down the slope to the rally point, a cluster of boulders providing wind cover. Miller was there, counting heads. He looked at Maya, then at Viper, sensing the tension but saying nothing. Status, Miller demanded. All present, Maya reported. But we have a problem, Master Chief. She held up her wrist GPS. The screen was flickering, the coordinates jumping wildly between grid squares. My GPS shows us in Tajikistan, Maya said, but the terrain features match the secondary extraction point, which is 10 clicks south. Miller checked his own device. He tapped it, frowning. Mine too. Satellites are drifting. It's not drift, Maya said, looking out into the dark valley below. The silence of the mountains felt heavy, watching them. It's jamming. Someone knows we're here, or they're hiding something big enough to warp the signal for 50 miles. Miller looked at her, his eyes hard. We have a job to do. Dead reckoning from here on out. Map and compass. Old school. Maya looked at the jagged horizon. The mission had just started, and already the intelligence was wrong. The ghost of the crying girl was gone, replaced by the cold calculation of the sniper. Lead the way, Master Chief, she said. I'll cover the rear. As they began the trudge into the darkness, Maya felt the familiar weight of the unknown settling on her shoulders. The mountains didn't care about their tech. The mountains were waiting to see who would break first. The mountains didn't just exist. They loomed, silent judges in the dark waiting for a verdict. The team moved in a single file, spaced 10 meters apart to mitigate the damage of an explosive or an ambush. They were shadows passing through shadows, ghosts haunting the jagged spine of the Hindu Kush. Maya Vance brought up the rear. Her ruck weighed 80 pounds, counting the sniper system strapped to it. But at 12,000 feet, it felt like she was carrying a collapsed star. Every breath was a negotiation with the thin air. The oxygen molecules were sparse, forcing her lungs to work double time just to keep her vision sharp. The GPS was still useless, flashing erratic coordinates that would have walked them off a cliff. Master Chief Miller was leading by compass and terrain association, a skill that was reliable but slow. They were behind schedule. The sun was a threat now, a ticking clock that would strip away their cover in less than 2 hours. "Hold!" Miller's voice cracked over the short-range comms, barely a whisper. The line froze instantly. Maya took a knee, her eyes scanning the rear sector through her thermal imager. The world was a monochrome palette of cool blues and blacks. Nothing moved, no heat signatures, just the indifferent cold of the stone. "Movement front, or just a break," Maya transmitted, keeping her voice level. "Terrain check," Miller replied. "We need to cross the valley floor to hit the ridge line. It's open ground. 300 meters. Maya frowned behind her mask. The valley floor was a natural, fatal funnel. If anyone was watching, they would be silhouettes against the snow. Intelligence had listed this sector as cold uninhabited, primarily used by goat herders in the summer. But the jamming signal suggested otherwise. Intelligence had been wrong about the drop zone. They could be wrong about this. "Moving," Miller ordered. They descended slowly. The snow here was deeper, hiding loose shale that threatened to snap ankles with every step. The sound of their boots crunching seemed deafening to Maya, like crushing glass in a library. Crunch, crunch, crunch. As they reached the tree line on the far side of the clearing, the point man, an operator named Tex, picked up the pace. He was eager to get back into the cover of the pines. Maya watched him through her night vision. He was good, solid, but he was tired. She could see it in the way his shoulders slumped slightly, the way he scanned only the horizon and not the ground at his feet. Maya's gaze drifted lower. She wasn't looking for enemies. She was looking for anomalies. A broken branch. A pile of leaves that looked too symmetrical. She saw it. It wasn't a wire. It was a disturbance in the pattern of the snow, a barely visible horizontal line where the frost had been brushed away, hovering ankle height between two saplings. "Freeze," Maya hissed, the command cutting through the comms with the sharpness of a whip crack. Tex froze mid-step, his boot hovering inches above the ground. The rest of the team went to guns, scanning the perimeter for contact. "Wraith?" Miller demanded. "Don't put your foot down, Tex," Maya said, moving forward. She kept her weapon trained, but her eyes were locked on the ground. "Scan your 6 o'clock low." Tex looked down. Through his NVGs, he finally saw it. A fishing line painted white, strung tight across the path. It was connected to a crude device buried at the base of a pine tree, a Soviet-era PMN mine rigged as a trip flare or a frag initiator. Tex slowly retracted his foot, stepping backward with exaggerated care. He let out a breath that fogged his goggles. "Good eye, Wraith. I didn't see a damn thing." "That's because you were looking for shooters," Maya whispered as she approached the device. She knelt, examining the rig. "This isn't a hasty emplacement. The snow has settled over the anchor points. This has been here for days." "Intel said this route was clean," Viper muttered. "Intel is batting 1,000 tonight," Miller grunted. "Mark it and bypass. We don't touch it." As they skirted the trap, Maya felt a strange, cold comfort settle in her chest. For years, her instructors had told her she overprocessed information, that she hesitated because she was looking for problems that weren't there. "You think too much, Vance," they said. "Just react." But out here, reaction was too slow. Reaction meant you were already in the kill zone. Anticipation was survival. Her anxiety, the constant, low-level hum of hypervigilance that made social interactions exhausting, was the only reason Tex still had his legs. They pushed on, the ascent becoming steeper. The air grew thinner, the cold more biting. By the time they reached the designated coordinates for the observation post, a rocky outcropping overlooking the target village, the eastern sky was bleeding a faint, bruised purple. Dawn. Set security, Miller ordered. Maya dropped her ruck, her muscles screaming in relief. She pulled out her spotting scope and began to construct the hide. They needed to blend into the rock face perfectly. A single glint of a lens, a single straight line in a world of fractals, and they were dead. She crawled into the small cave they had selected. It offered a perfect vantage point of the valley below. She swept the floor of the cave with her gloved hand, clearing debris to set up her mat. Her hand touched something soft. She froze. She pulled her hand back and turned on the low-lumen red light on her vest. It was a cigarette butt. She picked it up. It was crushed, stained with saliva, but the paper wasn't brittle. It was pliable. "Boss," Maya whispered. Miller crawled in beside her. "What do you have?" She held up the cigarette butt. Then she pointed to a small pile of gray dust near the back wall of the overhang. "Ash," she said. She reached out and hovered her hand over the stone floor beneath the dust. "The rock is still warm." Miller cursed silently. "How warm?" "Someone was here less than an hour ago. Maybe 30 minutes. "A shepherd?" Maya shook her head. She turned the cigarette butt over. Stamped on the filter in tiny gold letters was a brand. Sobrani. Expensive. Russian import. Not something a goat herder in the Hindu Kush smokes. "No," Maya said, her eyes meeting Miller's. The skepticism in his gaze was gone, replaced by the hard realization of their situation. "This was a sentry. They knew we were coming," Miller said, "or they're waiting for something else." "We need to move," Viper whispered from the entrance. "Sun is up." "Too late," Maya said, looking through the gap in the rocks. The valley below was waking up. "If we move now, we're spotted. We have to own this space. If they come back..." "We kill them quietly," Miller finished. He looked at Maya. "Set up the glass, Wraith. If this sentry reports in, we might already be surrounded. I want eyes on every moving shadow." Maya settled behind her rifle. The comfort of the stock against her cheek was the only familiar thing in a world that was rapidly shifting from a mission to a trap. She adjusted her scope, the crosshairs settling on the village below. She wasn't just watching anymore. She was hunting the hunter. The sun was now a physical weight on the mountain, burning through the thin atmosphere with radioactive intensity. Inside the rocky overhang, however, the temperature remained grave cold. Maya lay motionless behind the veil of camouflage netting she had painstakingly woven into the jagged mouth of the cave. She had spent the last hour constructing the loophole, the narrow aperture through which her rifle and spotting scope would view the world. It was an art form, too wide and the shadow inside the cave would look like a black eye on the mountain face. Too narrow and her field of fire was useless. "Comms?" she whispered, her lips barely moving against the mic boom. "Garbage," Viper replied from the back of the cave, where he was huddled over the PRC 117G radio. "I'm getting carrier wave, but no handshake. The jamming is broad spectrum. I can push a burst transmission, but receiving is going to be spotty." "Keep trying. Command will be climbing the walls if we miss the check-in window," Master Chief Miller muttered. He was positioned near the entrance, his carbine resting across his knees, watching the blind spot leading up to their position. The space was claustrophobic. It was barely 4 feet high and 10 feet deep, smelling of ancient dust and the sharp, metallic tang of their own sweat. They were intruders in a tomb. The knowledge that a sentry had smoked a cigarette here less than 90 minutes ago hung in the air like a toxic gas. If he came back, it would be a knife fight in a phone booth. Maya adjusted the focus on her Leupold Mark IV spotting scope. The village below, labeled Objective Sierra on the maps, was beginning to stir. It was a cluster of mud brick compounds walled off from the world, nestled in the valley floor like a cancer. "Drink," Miller said, sliding a pouch of water toward her. "You're dehydrated." Maya took a small sip, swishing the lukewarm water to clear the taste of adrenaline and stale protein paste. She handed it back. You hesitated back there, Miller said. It wasn't a question. His voice was low, masked by the wind whistling past the rock face, but it carried the weight of an accusation. Maya didn't look away from the scope. I halted the column, Master Chief. You froze before you saw the wire. I saw your body lock up. Miller shifted, the fabric of his uniform rasping against the stone. I need to know if your head is in the game, Wraith, or if you're back in Coronado. Maya slowly pulled her eye away from the optic. She turned her head, meeting Miller's gaze in the gloom. The reference to Coronado, to the crying, to the weakness, was a scalpel. He was digging for the nerve. In Coronado, I broke because I was trying to survive the cold, Maya said, her voice terrifyingly even. Today, I stopped because the pattern of the snow was wrong. My subconscious picked it up before my eyes did. That freeze you saw? That was me processing the data that saved your legs. She held his stare. She didn't blink. She didn't defend herself with anger. She defended herself with the cold, hard facts of her lethality. I don't need you to like me, Miller. I don't need you to trust my emotions. I need you to trust my eyes. Because right now, they are the only thing keeping us from getting fragged. Miller stared at her for a long moment, searching for a crack in the armor. He didn't find one. He gave a curt nod, a concession of territory. Fair enough, he grunted. Just make sure those eyes stay open. Contact, Viper hissed, cutting the tension. I got a chirp from command. They want a sit rep. They're asking if we have eyes on the HVT. Negative on HVT, Maya reported, returning to her scope. Activity in the village is increasing. I've got 3 military-age males moving from the north compound to the central plaza. Armed, AK pattern rifles. No discipline. They're slouching. Locals, Miller asked. Likely, but wait. Maya adjusted the magnification. I have a vehicle, black SUV, Toyota Land Cruiser, up-armored. That's early, Miller checked his wrist. Intel said the meet wasn't until 1400 Zulu. It's 0900. 2 vehicles now, Maya narrated, her voice slipping into the rhythmic cadence of the sniper. Second one is a technical, DSHK heavy machine gun mounted on the back. They're pulling into the courtyard of the main compound. The dust cloud from the vehicles settled, revealing the occupants. Men in black tactical gear stepped out of the SUV. They moved differently than the locals. Sharp, alert, weapons at the low ready. That's not a local militia, Maya said. That's a security detail. Professional. Can you ID the principal? Miller asked, crawling forward to look through his own binos. Waiting for the door, Maya held her breath. The rear door of the Land Cruiser opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a pristine gray suit that looked absurdly out of place amidst the mud and livestock. He checked his watch, looked up at the mountains, almost directly at Maya's hide, and then smoothed his lapel. Positive ID, Maya whispered. Target is Rashid al-Hassan. He's here. Copy, Viper said. Relaying to command. PID established. He's 5 hours early, Maya murmured, a frown creasing her brow behind the optic. Why show up early to a drug deal in the middle of a war zone? She watched al-Hassan. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look like a man selling a bioweapon. He looked like a man waiting for a bus. He turned back to the car and reached inside. He's retrieving something, Maya said. Weapon? Briefcase? Al-Hassan pulled his hand out. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a hand. A small child, a girl no older than 7, climbed out of the armored car. She was wearing a bright pink backpack. Al-Hassan adjusted her backpack straps, patted her head, and held her hand as they walked toward the building. The silence in the hide site was absolute. Viper, Maya said, her voice tight. Did Intel mention a family? Negative, Viper replied. Target profile said he's a solo operator. No next of kin. He's a ghost. Well, Maya watched the little girl skip over a puddle of mud, clutching the hand of one of the world's most wanted terrorists. The ghost just brought his daughter to work. Command says stand by for green light, Viper relayed. They want the shot as soon as he steps out for the meeting. Maya looked at the pink backpack through the crosshairs. The variables were shifting. The timeline was broken. The profile was wrong, and the cold pit in her stomach, the one she had tried to bury in Coronado, began to open up again. "Something is wrong, Miller," she whispered. "This doesn't feel right." "Doesn't matter how it feels, Wraith," Miller said, chambering a round in his carbine. "It only matters what the order is." The heat mirage was getting worse. The air in the valley shimmered like oil on water, bending the light and trying to lie to Maya's eyes. She dialed the parallax adjustment on her scope, fighting the physics of the atmosphere to keep the image of Rashid Al-Hassan crisp. "Range?" she asked, her voice a monotone drone. 840 meters, Miller replied, lowering the Vector 21 rangefinder. "Angle is 17 degrees down. Hold under 0.3 mils. Maya made the micro adjustment. The crosshairs settled on the third button of Al-Hassan's gray suit jacket. He was pacing in the dusty courtyard of the compound, wiping sweat from his forehead with a white handkerchief. He looked terrified. "Viper, how's the audio?" Maya asked. "Sketchy," Viper whispered from the back of the hide. He was monitoring the feed from a laser vibrometer they had trained on the compound's window glass, as well as a directional mic aimed at the courtyard. "I'm getting wind noise, but he's talking to himself." "Reciting?" "Sounds like it. Rehearsing." Maya watched the target. Al-Hassan stopped pacing and looked down at his daughter. The girl was sitting on the running board of the Land Cruiser, drawing in the dirt with a stick. She was wearing headphones, bright, cartoonish things that looked absurdly out of place in a war zone. Al-Hassan crouched down, touched her cheek, and said something that made his shoulders sag. "He's not checking a perimeter," Maya observed, analyzing the body language. "He's saying goodbye." "Don't narrate, Wraith, just track," Miller warned, though his own binoculars were fixed on the scene with intensity. "Negative, Master Chief. This doesn't fit the profile," Maya insisted. "Intel says Al-Hassan is a hardliner, a broker for the insurgency. Look at his hands. They're shaking. He's not carrying a weapon. He's carrying a leather satchel, and he keeps checking the sky to the north." "So? The buyer's coming from the south," Maya said. "The north is the border. The north is us." She zoomed in on the satchel. Al-Hassan placed it on the hood of the car. He opened it. Maya expected to see canisters, vials, the silver gleam of the weaponized virus. Instead, he pulled out a stack of papers and a laptop. He opened the laptop, turned it toward the open gate of the compound, and stood next to it, hands raised slightly, palms out. "Viper, do we have eyes on the screen?" "Negative. Angle is bad." "He's setting up a presentation," Maya said, her mind racing. The pieces clicked together with the terrifying clarity that usually preceded disaster. "He's not selling the virus, Miller. He's offering it up. He's surrendering." "That's a hell of a leap," Miller growled. "Look at the girl," Maya snapped, breaking her monotone. "He brought her to leverage sympathy. He's waiting for extraction. He thinks we are the ones coming to pick him up." "Command, this is Viper." The comms specialist spoke urgently into the handset. "Observations from the hide suggest HVT is attempting a defect. No visible weapons. Presence of a miner confirmed. Request updated ROE." The silence from the radio was heavy, filled with the hiss of cosmic static and the encrypted scrambling of a satellite 20,000 miles away. Maya kept her crosshairs on Al-Hassan's chest, but her finger hovered off the trigger guard. "Don't make me do this," she thought. "Don't make me kill a man who is asking for help." "Break, break," the radio crackled. The voice was different this time, harder. It wasn't their usual handler. It was the JOC, Joint Operations Center commander. "Alpha Element, this is Overlord. Ignore the theatrics. Intelligence confirms Al-Hassan is meeting a buyer to hand off the payload. The surrender is a ruse to lure the buyer in or stall for time. The payload is in the satchel." "The satchel is flat, Overlord," Maya interjected, violating radio protocol. "It contains documents. There are no containment vessels visible." "Lieutenant Commander Vance," the voice cut her off like a guillotine. "We have thermal signatures of a convoy approaching from the south. The exchange is imminent. If that payload leaves the valley, we lose it forever. You are green light on Al-Hassan. Weapons free. Eliminate the target before the exchange occurs." "There is a child in the splash zone," Maya said through gritted teeth. "Then aim better, Wraith." The link clicked off. Miller looked at her. The shadows in the cave seemed to deepen. You heard the man. Green light. It's a bad call, Maya whispered. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a frantic rhythm that threatened to throw off her aim. Miller, he's waiting for us. We aren't extraction, Maya, Miller said, using her first name for the first time. It wasn't an act of kindness. It was a final warning. We are the eraser. If you don't take this shot, you are disobeying a direct order in the face of the enemy. That's treason. Maya looked back through the scope. Al-Hassan had stood up. He was looking at his watch again. He looked straight up at the mountain, almost locking eyes with her through the lens. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a father who had run out of options. Wind check, Miller ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. 3 miles per hour, left to right. Dial it. Maya didn't move. Her training screamed at her to obey. Good soldiers follow orders. Good soldiers don't cry. Good soldiers kill. But the ghost inside her, the part that noticed the tripwire, the part that felt the cold, was screaming something else. It's a lie. Wraith, Miller barked. Dial the wind. She exhaled slowly, her breath trembling in her chest. She reached up and clicked the windage turret. Click, click. Dialed, she whispered. Target is stationary, Miller narrated. Send it. Maya placed the pad of her finger on the trigger. She took up the slack. The wall was there, the point where the rifle would fire. All she had to do was add 2 pounds of pressure, just a twitch. But her eye wasn't on Al-Hassan's heart anymore. It was on the little girl, who had just stood up and grabbed her father's leg, burying her face in his trousers. I can't take the shot, Maya said. Obscured. He's clear, Miller yelled, losing his cool. Take the damn shot. Negative. Child is obstructing. Command, Wraith is refusing. Suddenly, the valley exploded. It wasn't Maya's rifle. It was a mortar round impacting the courtyard wall. Dust and shrapnel sprayed the air. Al-Hassan grabbed his daughter and threw himself to the ground. Contact south, Viper screamed. The buyer had arrived, and they weren't buying. The valley floor was no longer a stage. It was a slaughterhouse. The mortar impact had kicked up a wall of brown dust that swallowed the courtyard, turning the crisp HD image in Maya's scope into a swirling nebulous fog. Status, Wraith, report. Overlord's voice was shredding the audio feed, bypassing the usual calm of the chain of command. Did you splash the target? Maya blinked, her eyelids feeling like sandpaper. She didn't answer immediately. She was reading the wind. The explosion had created a thermal updraft, a localized weather system that would lift her bullet inches high if she didn't account for it. She glanced at the Kestrel meter mounted next to her optic. The numbers were flickering. Wind, 4 miles. Temperature, rising. Barometric pressure, dropping. Negative, Maya said, her voice frighteningly calm against the chaos in her ear. Visual lost, waiting for dust to settle. Blind fire, Lieutenant. We have thermal confirmation he is still in the kill box. Put a round through the wall if you have to. If he gets into that vehicle, we lose him. ROE violation, Viper muttered from the back, his hands flying over the radio controls. Sir, we cannot fire without PID. There is a civilian. Override, Overlord screamed. This is a direct order. The asset is compromised. We are scrubbing the mission. Eliminate Al-Hassan. Now. The dust began to thin. Through the thermal overlay of her scope, Maya saw the heat signatures re-emerge. 2 blobs of white-hot light, one large, one small. They hadn't run for the car. They were huddled behind a stone trough near the well. The large signature was curled around the small one, a shield of flesh and bone. Al-Hassan wasn't fighting. He wasn't fleeing. He was dying to protect his daughter. I see him, Miller said, his voice tight. He had his carbine up, but the range was pushing the limits of the 5.56 round. Wraith, you have the angle. Take it. He's shielding the girl, Maya said. Wraith, do you copy? The radio screech was unbearable. It wasn't just an order anymore. It was panic. Command was scared of something. Not of Al-Hassan escaping, but of what Al-Hassan might say if he was taken alive. Maya reached up. Her gloved hand found the quick disconnect cable on her headset. Click. The silence hit her like a physical blow. Suddenly the world was just the wind, the whistle of her own breath, and the beating of her heart. Thump, 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 thump. It was the God moment. Every sniper knew it. That split second where the chain of command, the politics, and the war ceased to exist. There was only the shooter and the target. She held the power of life and death in the curl of her index finger. It was a terrifying, intoxicating weight. She looked at her dope card taped to the stock of the rifle. 800 yards in 17 degrees angle, 22.5 MOA elevation. The math was perfect. She could thread a needle at this distance. She could kill the father and spare the child. The bullet would pass through his spine, severing the cord instantly. He wouldn't feel a thing. But the silence in her head allowed the other data to filter in. The buyer convoy wasn't just engaging the compound, they were sweeping it. They were moving with precision, tossing flashbangs, suppressing the windows. They weren't reacting to an ambush. They were the cleanup crew. If she fired now, she was doing their job for them. Maya closed her eyes for a microsecond. She saw the surf at Coronado. She saw the instructors laughing. "You're too soft, Vance. You feel too much." "No," she thought, opening her eyes. "I don't feel too much. I see everything." She reconnected the cable. The static rushed back in. "Threaten you with court-martial. Vance, engage immediately." "Control, this is Wraith," she said, her voice ice. "Target is obscured by hard cover. No shot. I repeat, no ethical shot." "You are lying." "Wind has shifted," she lied effortlessly. "Gusting 20. Unsafe trajectory." Below, the heavy machine gun on the lead technical vehicle of the attacking force opened up. Thump, thump, thump. The DSHK rounds tore through the mud walls of the compound like paper. The buyer wasn't here to negotiate for the virus. They were here to erase the seller. "Miller," Maya said, shifting her aim away from Al-Hassan. "We have a third party entering the kill zone, and they are hostile to the HVT." Miller looked at her. He knew she had lied about the wind. He knew she had unplugged the comms. He looked at the chaos below, then back at her. "They're breaching the gate," Miller reported, his tone shifting from subordinate to operator. "Command, be advised, unknown force is liquidating the target area. If we want the intel, we can't shoot the man holding it." "Hold fire," Overlord's voice came back, breathless, defeated, but vibrating with rage. "Observe only." "But Vance, mark my words. If that intel is lost, it's your head." Maya didn't respond. She adjusted her scope, moving the crosshairs off Al-Hassan and onto the driver of the lead technical truck crashing through the compound gate. The ambush was in full swing. The mission had just changed from an assassination to a rescue, whether command wanted it or not. The valley floor was a kill box. The lead technical, a rusted Toyota Hilux with a DSHK heavy machine gun mounted in the bed, had breached the compound wall. The gunner was traversing the barrel, walking a line of heavy caliber rounds toward the stone trough where Al-Hassan and his daughter were cowering. The impacts were tearing the stone apart, sending shards of masonry flying like shrapnel. "They're going to liquidate him," Viper hissed, watching the feed on his tablet. 10 seconds, Max." "Hold," Miller ordered, his knuckles white on his carbine. "We are invisible right now. If we engage, we become the primary target. We are 4 men against a platoon." Maya didn't look up from her scope. She was running the math. The distance was 840 yards. The target was the technical. Not the gunner. He was a symptom. The truck was the disease. If she killed the gunner, another would take his place. If she killed the truck, the heavy gun was dead. "Miller," Maya said, her voice dropping into that detached trance-like state. "If they kill him, we lose the laptop. We lose the network. We lose the virus." "And if you fire that cannon," Miller snapped, gesturing to the massive Chetak M200, "every swinging dick in that valley is going to look right at this cliff. Then we better move fast." Maya exhaled. She wasn't asking for permission anymore. The chain of command had broken down. The ROE was a mess of contradictions. The only truth left was the crosshair. She shifted her aim. The engine block of the Hilux. A cast-iron heart protected by thin sheet metal. The 408 round was a solid copper-nickel alloy projectile designed to carry supersonic energy for over a mile. It would turn an engine block into a fragmentation grenade. "Wraith, don't!" she squeezed. Crack, boom! The sound wasn't a gunshot, it was a thunderclap. The muzzle brake vented the gases sideways, kicking up a cloud of dust inside the cave despite the wet mats she had laid down. The rifle slammed into her shoulder, a brutal, familiar shove. Down in the valley, physics took over. The bullet struck the grill of the Technical less than 2 seconds later. It punched through the radiator, shattered the fan, and slammed into the cylinder block with the force of a freight train. The engine detonated. Oil and fuel vaporized instantly on the hot metal, igniting a fireball that engulfed the front of the truck. The vehicle lurched and died. The gunner was thrown from the bed by the sudden stop. "Direct hit," Viper whispered, awe in his voice. "Vehicle disabled." The silence in the valley lasted for exactly 3 seconds. The attackers froze, confused by the thunder from the mountain. Then the realization hit them. They were being hunted from above. "Displacement! Now!" Miller roared, kicking the camouflage netting away. "Move! Move!" Maya cycled the bolt. The massive brass casing ejected, spinning in the air before hitting the stone floor with a heavy clink. She grabbed the handle of the rifle, not bothering to break it down. "Contact front!" Viper yelled. The valley erupted. Every gun that had been pointed at Al-Hassan now swung upward toward the cliff face. Green tracers began to stitch the air, snapping angrily against the rocks 10 feet below their cave. "They have our bracket," Miller shouted, grabbing his ruck. "Get to the secondary extraction point." Maya paused for 1 second at the lip of the cave. Through the smoke and chaos below, she saw Al-Hassan. He wasn't cowering anymore. He had grabbed his daughter and was running. But he wasn't running away from the fight. He was running toward the mountain. Toward her. "He's coming to us," Maya said, slinging the 40-pound rifle onto her back. "He's leading them right to us," Miller countered, shoving her toward the rear exit of the overhang, a narrow fissure that led up to the ridgeline. Then came the sound Maya hated most in the world, a hollow thump from the valley floor. Then another. Then another. "Mortars! Go!" They scrambled into the fissure just as the first round impacted the ledge where they had been lying seconds before. The explosion shook the mountain, showering them with rock dust and shale. The concussion wave slapped Maya's back, nearly knocking her off her feet. She didn't look back. The hide was gone. The element of surprise was gone. They were no longer observers. They were prey. "Wraith, take point!" Miller ordered, his voice barely audible over the ringing in her ears. "Get us to the high ground." Maya pushed forward, her lungs burning, her legs screaming under the weight of her gear. But her mind was clear. She had made her choice. She had traded her safety for the life of a traitor and a child. Now she had to survive long enough to find out if it was worth it. The mountain was trying to shake them off. Every mortar impact sent a tremor through the granite spine of the ridge, dislodging shale and ice that rained down on Alpha Element like shrapnel. Maya scrambled up the scree slope, her boots slipping on the loose rock. The 80-pound load on her back, the Chaytak, the ammo, the radio, felt like a coffin she was carrying to her own funeral. Her lungs burned with the thin, ragged air of 12,000 feet. "Move! High! Ground, go!" Miller's voice was a bark, raw and strained. Below them, the cloud of dust where their hide site used to be was expanding. The enemy mortar team was walking their fire up the slope, correcting for elevation. Thump, whistle, crack. The explosions were getting closer. "Viper, smokes!" Maya screamed, turning to cover their 6. Viper pulled the pins on 2 M18 smoke grenades, hurling them down the chute they had just climbed. Billows of violet and gray smoke erupted, screening their movement from the small arms fire that had begun to zip past them, angry, buzzing hornets of lead. "Command, this is Viper!" The comm specialist was shouting into the handset as he climbed. "We are taking heavy indirect fire, requesting immediate air support. Broken arrow. I repeat, broken arrow." The response from Overlord was not the calm assurance of a savior. It was the cold, digitized voice of a bureaucrat closing a file. "Alpha Element, this is Overlord. Negative on air support. Your mission was to eliminate the target. You failed to execute. The area is now a denied zone. You are designated as compromised. We are scrubbing the board." Maya froze for a microsecond, her hand gripping a jagged rock outcropping. Say again, Overlord. You are disavowed, Wraith. Make your own way out. Out. The link went dead. A hollow, static hiss replaced the command channel. They had been cut loose. No extraction, no QRF, no drone support. They were ghosts in a graveyard. Those bastards, Tex swore, firing a burst from his saw, squad automatic weapon, blindly into the smoke below. They left us to die. Stow it, Miller roared. We are still breathing, so we are still fighting. Get to the ridge. They pushed harder. The incline became nearly vertical. Maya slung her carbine, her MK-18, a short-barreled rifle she carried for these exact moments, and used her hands to claw up the rock face. Then the luck ran out. A mortar round didn't hit the slope. It hit the sheer wall directly above them. The explosion was deafening. A massive slab of granite, the size of a car door, sheared off the face. It fell amidst the team, shattering into razor-sharp boulders. Maya was thrown sideways, slamming into the rock wall. She shook her head, clearing the stars from her vision. Sound off, she yelled, coughing up dust. I'm good, Viper called. Tex is good. Silence from the rear. Miller? Maya scrambled back down the ledge. Master Chief Miller was lying on his side, half buried under the scree. His leg was pinned at an unnatural angle, and blood was already pooling dark and glossy on the gray stone. A piece of shrapnel had bypassed his plate carrier, embedding itself in his upper thigh, dangerously close to the femoral artery. Damn it, Miller hissed through gritted teeth, his face pale beneath the dirt. He tried to push himself up, but his leg collapsed. Leave me. Take the team. Shut up, Maya snarled. She didn't sound like a subordinate anymore. She sounded like the Wraith. She grabbed the drag handle on the back of his vest. Tex, suppressive fire. Viper, get on the other side. We drag him. Wraith, you can't. I said move. Maya dug her boots into the gravel. She heaved. The weight of Miller, plus his gear, was over 250 pounds. Her muscles screamed. Her vision tunneled. The strain was so intense that tears pricked the corners of her eyes, a physiological response to extreme exertion. For a second, the voice in her head whispered, You're crying again. You're weak. She bit her lip until it bled, tasting the copper. She wasn't crying from sadness. She was leaking pressure. Heave! She screamed. They dragged Miller up the last 10 yards of the chute, cresting the ridge just as a mortar round obliterated the ledge they had been standing on. They collapsed into a shallow ravine on the reverse slope, gasping for air that wasn't there. Miller was fading. He looked at Maya, his eyes glassy. You shouldn't have stopped. For me. We don't leave people behind, Maya said, applying a tourniquet to his leg with shaking hands. She tightened the windlass until he groaned. Not in my team. Contact, Tex yelled, spinning his machine gun around. Rear! Maya grabbed her rifle, expecting the enemy pursuit force to be cresting the ridge. But it wasn't the pursuit force. Stumbling out of a goat path that intersected their ravine was a man in a torn gray suit, carrying a little girl in a pink backpack. It was Rashid al-Hassan. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He saw the American soldiers, the demons of the mountain, and he didn't raise his hands. He raised the laptop bag. Do not shoot, al-Hassan shouted in perfect English, breathless. The men behind me. They are Spetsnaz, Russian contractors. They are here to clean up the mess. Maya leveled her MK-18 at his chest. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man she was sent to kill was now the only other person on this mountain who wasn't trying to kill her. Why are you running to us? Maya demanded, her finger on the trigger. Because, al-Hassan gasped, looking back at the ridge where the enemy was advancing. You are the only ones who didn't fire when you had the chance. He looked at Maya, locking eyes with her. He knew. He knew she was the sniper on the cliff. They are coming, al-Hassan said, and I have the proof of who paid them. Help me, and I give you the world. Maya looked at Miller, bleeding out. She looked at her exhausted team. She looked at the terrified little girl clinging to the terrorist's leg. They were disavowed. They were alone. And now they had a defector. Tex, Maya said, lowering her weapon slightly. Give him a mag. If he shoots at us, kill him. She turned to the ravine exit. "We aren't a hit squad anymore," she said to the wind. "We're a convoy." The ravine was a jagged scar in the earth, a narrow throat of granite that offered their only cover and their potential tomb. The sun had dipped below the peaks, plunging the world into a premature twilight that smelled of snow and impending violence. "Check ammo," Maya ordered. Her voice was unrecognizable. The tremor was gone. The hesitation was gone. In their place was a flat, metallic resonance that frightened her more than the mortar fire. "3 mags, Tex reported, wiping grit from his saw's feed tray. "And I'm down to the nuts and bolts on the belt." "2 mags, Viper said. He was crouching over Miller, who was drifting in and out of consciousness. Al-Hassan sat opposite them, clutching a Glock 19 Maya had tossed him. His daughter was curled into a ball behind a boulder, wearing Viper's spare headset to dampen the noise. "I have 5 rounds, Maya said, patting the stock of the Chaytak M200, "and 2 claymores." "They're flanking," Viper said, looking at the thermal tablet. The screen was cracked, but the data was clear. 2 elements, 1 pushing up the gut, 1 circling the ridge to drop on our heads. 20 packs minimum. "They aren't trying to suppress us," Maya noted, analyzing the speed of the red dots on the screen. "They're rushing. They want this done before nightfall." "They're sloppy," Tex growled. "No," Maya corrected. "They're arrogant. They think we're broken." She moved to the mouth of the ravine. She placed the 2 M18A1 Claymore mines in a crossfire pattern, angling them to cover the fatal funnel where the path narrowed to less than 3 meters. She spooled the firing wire back to their position, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. "Tex, when I blow the claymores, you dump the belt. Keep their heads down. Viper, you and Al-Hassan move Miller up the trail. I'll hold the rear." "You can't hold a platoon with a bolt-action rifle, Wraith," Viper argued. "Watch me." Maya climbed a small rock shelf 6 feet above the ravine floor. It was a suicide position, exposed, but it offered a lane of fire straight down the throat of the attackers. She settled the massive rifle onto its bipod. The scope was dialed back to minimum magnification. At this range, less than 200 meters, the 408 round wouldn't just kill, it would disintegrate. The silence stretched, tight as a piano wire. Then came the sound of boots on gravel. Fast, aggressive. Shadows detached themselves from the rocks below. They moved with a fluidity that Maya recognized. Not conscripts, not average grunts. These were Tier 1 operators. They wore Russian digital flora camo, but their movement, the way they checked corners, it was Western. Contractors, Maya realized. Mercenaries paid to look like Russians. The lead element entered the choke point. 5 men. Point man, slack man, heavy weapon. Maya waited. She let them get closer. Close enough to see the whites of their eyes through the optic. Close enough to ensure the claymores wouldn't just wound. Clack, clack. She squeezed the detonators. Clackers. Boom. The explosion was a physical punch to the chest. 700 steel ball bearings shredded the air at supersonic speeds. The lead element evaporated in a cloud of red mist and dust. "Contact!" Tex screamed, opening up with the saw. "Bert!" The ravine filled with the chaotic noise of automatic fire. The remaining enemy forces didn't retreat. They pushed through the smoke, firing blindly. Bullets chipped the rock inches from Maya's face, sending stone splinters into her cheek. She didn't flinch. She acquired a target through the smoke, a silhouette moving to cover behind a thick slab of slate. She fired. The recoil of the Chaytak in the confined space was brutal. The muzzle blast kicked up a vortex of dust. The bullet punched through the slate rock as if it were cardboard and took the man behind it in the chest. 1 down. She cycled the bolt. Clack, clack. Another figure tried to rush the gap. Maya fired. The round hit him in the hip, spinning him around and dropping him instantly. 2 down, but they were getting closer. A grenade landed near Tex, exploding with a deafening crack. Tex screamed, clutching his arm, the saw falling silent. "Tex is down," Viper yelled. "Go! Get them out!" Maya screamed, not looking back. She was alone on the ledge. The enemy fire was concentrating on her now. She could hear the snap hiss of rounds passing her ears. She had 3 rounds left. Through the scope, she saw him, the commander. He wasn't rushing. He was standing back, directing the flow of the assault with hand signals. He wore a distinct black balaclava and carried a customized carbine. He was shouting something, his voice cutting through the gunfire. "Finish them! No witnesses! Burn the bodies!" The accent. It wasn't Russian, it wasn't Arabic, it was American. Southern drawl, hard and flat. Maya froze for a fraction of a second. It was the cleanup crew, and they were her countrymen. The betrayal wasn't just bureaucratic, it was fratricidal. The rage that surged through her wasn't hot, it was absolute zero. It clarified the world. The tinnitus ringing in her ears faded. The pain in her bruised shoulder vanished. "You want to erase me," she thought? "Come and try." The commander stepped behind a heavy oak tree, using it for cover as he reloaded. A standard 5.56 round wouldn't penetrate that wood. Maya adjusted her aim. The Chaytak 408 was designed to stop vehicles. An oak tree was nothing. She focused on the trunk, estimating where his center of mass would be. "Goodbye," she whispered. She pulled the trigger. The rifle roared one last time. The tree trunk exploded in a shower of splinters. The bullet passed through the wood, deformed but retaining massive energy, and struck the commander in the torso. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The assault faltered. With their leader dead in the heavy weapon's silence, the mercenaries hesitated. That hesitation was all Maya needed. She dropped the empty rifle. It was useless weight now, and drew her MK-27 pistol. She slid down the rock face, landing in the dust. She moved to the body of the commander. She needed to know. He was gasping, blood bubbling from his chest. His eyes found hers. There was no recognition, only shock. Maya reached down and ripped the radio handset from his vest. It was live. "Actual, this is 6, a voice crackled from the earpiece. "Status? Have you sanitized the site?" Maya's blood ran cold. She knew that voice. It was the JOC commander. Overlord. She pressed the transmit button. "6 is dead," Maya said, her voice trembling with adrenaline but clear as a bell. "This is Wraith, and I'm coming for the recording." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Vance," Overlord whispered, "you have no idea what you've done." "I saved the girl," Maya said, "and I kept the receipts." She crushed the handset against the rock, destroying it. "Wraith!" Viper's voice called from up the trail. "We found a cave system. We can lose them." Maya looked at the dead American at her feet, then at the rifle she had left behind. She turned and ran toward her team. She wasn't a soldier anymore. She was a witness, and that made her the most dangerous thing on the mountain. The air in the debriefing room at Ramstein Air Base was scrubbed clean, filtered to a sterile chill that felt colder than the Hindu Kush. There was no dust here, no smell of cordite or copper blood. Just the hum of the server racks behind the wall and the aggressive whiteness of the fluorescent lights. Lieutenant Commander Maya Vance sat on a metal chair, bolted to the floor. She was wearing clean fatigues, her hands resting calmly on the steel table. Her knuckles were still bruised, scabbing over dark purple, but her face was a mask of porcelain calm. The door opened. No knock. A man entered. He wore a navy dress uniform with the 2 stars of a rear admiral. It was Overlord, the voice on the radio. The man who had ordered her to kill a child to cover his tracks. His name tag read Harrison. He didn't sit. He stood at the end of the table, placing a thick file folder between them. "Lieutenant Commander," Harrison said. His voice was smooth, lacking the static and panic of the radio transmission. "I'm glad to see you made it out. It was a chaotic extraction." "It was a setup, Admiral," Maya said. Her voice didn't rise. It was the same tone she used to call wind adjustments. Flat, deadly. Harrison sighed, a theatrical gesture of patience. "War is messy, Vance. Intelligence is fluid. We had reports of a compromised asset. We acted to protect national security. You sent American contractors to liquidate my team," Maya corrected him. "And when that failed, you tried to bury us with mortars." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "That is a serious accusation, and one you cannot prove. The official report states that Alpha Element was ambushed by a rogue splinter cell of the Spetsnaz. You fought bravely. You extracted the HVT, but unfortunately, he succumbed to his wounds. During transport, the data he carried was destroyed in the firefight. Maya looked at the file. It was a lie. A perfect, sanitized lie that made them heroes but erased the truth. Al-Hassan was alive, currently in a CIA black site, likely being debriefed by agents who didn't answer to Harrison. But the public record would say he died. "And my team?" Maya asked. "Medical retirement for Master Chief Miller. Full benefits. Purple Heart. The others get commendations and transfer orders to units of their choice. Everyone goes home a hero. Provided," Harrison tapped the file, "you sign the NDA and the after-action report as written. And if I don't, then the narrative changes," Harrison said, his voice dropping. "Then it becomes a story about a female officer who cracked under pressure, who hesitated, who disobeyed direct orders and got her team shot up. We pull the footage from your buds training, the crying video. We leak it. We paint you as unstable. You end up in Leavenworth, and Miller loses his pension." He smiled. It was a shark's smile. "You're the mermaid, right? The one who cries in the surf. Do you really think a jury will believe you over me?" Maya stared at him. For a moment, the room felt like it was spinning. The weight of the system was crushing. It was designed to break people like her. But she wasn't that girl anymore. That girl had drowned in the surf years ago. Maya slowly reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small silver USB drive. It wasn't the HVT's laptop drive. It was a copy. "You're right, Admiral," Maya said softly. "I did cry in training. It was cold. I was tired. I was human." She slid the drive across the steel table. It stopped inches from Harrison's hand. "But I learned something in that surf," she continued. "I learned that if you endure the pain long enough, you stop feeling it, and you start thinking." Harrison looked at the drive. "What is this?" "Before Al-Hassan was secured by the agency, he gave me a copy of his ledger. It details the payments made to the PMC group that attacked us. It has bank routing numbers, dates, and it has your signature authorizing the funds." Harrison's face went the color of ash. "I also have the audio recording of the comms from the ravine," Maya added, "where you ordered 6 to sanitize the site. I didn't destroy the handset, Admiral. I recorded it." The hum of the air conditioning seemed to get louder. "This is blackmail," Harrison whispered. "No," Maya said, standing up. "This is a standoff. Mutually assured destruction. Isn't that the doctrine you love so much?" She leaned over the table. "Here is the deal. I sign your report. Miller gets his pension and the best medical care the Navy can buy. My team stays intact. And you," she pointed a bruised finger at his chest, "once you resign, effective immediately. Health reasons, family issues, I don't care. But you are done." "You can't do that," Harrison sputtered. "If I walk out of here and that drive isn't in a secure locker within 10 minutes, a copy goes to the Inspector General and the New York Times. Make a decision, Admiral. You have 10 seconds. Green light or red light?" Harrison looked at the drive, then at Maya. He saw the look in her eyes. It was the same look she had given the enemy commander before she put a 408 round through an oak tree. He slumped, defeated. "Sign the papers," he rasped. Maya signed the report without reading it. She didn't need to. History was written by the victors, and she had just won. She walked out of the skiff, leaving the drive on the table. She didn't need it anymore. The fear she had instilled in him was more permanent than data. Outside in the hallway, Master Chief Miller was waiting. He was in a wheelchair, his leg heavily bandaged, but he was upright. Tex and Viper were flanking him. They stopped talking when she approached. They looked at her, really looked at her. "How did it go?" Miller asked. His voice was gruff, but the edge was gone. "It's handled," Maya said simply. "We're clear. You're getting full benefits, Grave." Miller looked at the door to the briefing room, then back at Maya. He knew what she had done. He knew she had stared down a corrupt command and blinked only to pull the trigger. He slowly raised his hand and offered a salute. It wasn't formal. It was personal. "They were wrong about you, Wraith," Miller said quietly. "You're not soft." "No," Maya said, looking down the long, empty corridor. "I'm not." She started walking toward the exit, her boots clicking rhythmically on the linoleum. She thought about the crying girl in the surf one last time. She didn't hate her anymore. That girl had felt the pain so the woman could survive the war. Maya Vance was a ghost, a myth. And now she was the deadliest thing the Navy possessed, not because she could hit a target at 2 miles, but because she knew where the bodies were buried, and she never missed.